Are we recording? We are. Cool. It is so hot in here. Oh my goodness, you guys, I'm sweating already and I've just started. We went from winter to summer in about 3 days. We literally didn't get spring, we just went straight into summer. It is so hot now. I kind of want an air conditioner. I can't believe how fast that went. I love it, but my body is not prepared for it. I have not adjusted to this yet, so I'm warm. And so if you see a nice sheen of sweat as we go, yeah, let me sweat. That's all there is to it. I'm not one of those ladies that just doesn't sweat. I'm a human being, people. What's happened to the intros of my videos? Well, I go from talking about the most ridiculous things to hopefully the most important things. Anyway, let's not break tradition and let's just get going. Hello. Please wait a moment, I'm unprepared and I need to get something on the internet. You just sit there and wait. 1 minute more. You may have noticed my lighting looks a little different. It's because it's nighttime. It is 10:17 p.m. I've kicked my family out of the house and I'm recording, which means the window that I normally have, the window's still there. The window that's behind you guys is normally lit up with daylight, and I don't have that now, so I just have my overhead light and a little lamp, which is why I look like I am glowing, and also from the sweat. I'm not sure if you're someone who follows entertainment news. I'm not really, but I do, occasionally see things about people who have died, or, I see the news. And one of the updates fairly recently was he's not a singer, the DJ Avicii, who was quite well known. He had some songs, specifically the ones that I really liked, which was Wake Me Up and Hey Brother. I really liked his music. Okay, I can't really say that because I didn't know anything other than that, but I liked those two songs. Very talented guy, very young guy, and he died, and it looks like it was suicide, and looks like it was pretty awful, and he seemed to be someone who was very weighed down by things and didn't quite know how to handle things, and it's very tragic. But it's kind of interesting because when you realize that someone is behind the song almost, you kind of can see the lyrics differently. You can hear a song a million times, you can sing along, you know the words, but when something like this tragic happens and then you look back at the lyrics, you kind of start to see, there's hints of maybe something that was going on mentally, because these words were written by this guy probably, and they betray some of what was going on in his life. And so I've had the Wake Me Up song just stuck in my head for the past few weeks, and some of the lyrics here, I know them, but just to be safe, I'm reading them so they're right on. So the second verse says, I tried carrying the weight of the world, but I only have 2 hands. I hope I get the chance to travel the world, but I don't have any plans. Wish that I could stay forever this young, not afraid to close my eyes. Life's a game made for everyone, and love is the prize. So these are lyrics that I know by heart, that I sing along with, that I like the song, I like the sound, I like the lyrics. And yet when this tragedy has happened and I've had that line just stuck in my head, and it's like, this really is showing this is a guy who was struggling, I wish that I could stay forever this young, not afraid to close my eyes. That kind of betrays fears and maybe dreams that he was being tortured by. I mean, you kind of get a glimpse of who the person behind the lyrics is, and it's really sad. And I've recently been looking at the Bible in a very different way, and I've started to see that you can kind of see the people behind these words in the same way as when you look at a song now, and you can see, the person behind the words, writing them, what they were going through. You can do the exact same thing with the Bible. All these words that are so familiar to us, if you put yourself in it and you see it from a different perspective, what was the person writing it thinking? You get a whole new view of this incredible book. And as you see in the title, it's funny because we tend to look at the Bible as if it's something for us to take pieces out of to help us with our lives. We like to grab a verse that becomes our life verse, or one that's really special to us. We have it on our walls, we have it on t-shirts, we have it on pillows, we have it on plaques. This is a verse that speaks to us, that makes us feel happy, that brings us joy, reminds us of who God is. We have all of these sayings and things around these verses, and isn't it kind of weird that the Bible is not a book? It's not something that someone sat down and individually penned 66 separate books and then, sold it to a publisher. No, it's 66 accounts of life, of genealogy, it's letters, it's songs, it's a hymnal. The Bible is not a self-help book written by someone to make you feel good. It is an epic story that's written over the course of 3,000 years by over 40 authors. And we've got it now so easy to grab, and in book format that we tend to just not notice that there's no author's name on the front, because we just we don't really put our brain in gear and think, yeah, this was actually written by however many people over a period of however many thousands of years that tells one story. That just blows my mind that it's all written by however many different people and it all tells one story. It's all leading to one person. Everything in the Old Testament was pointing to Jesus, and then Jesus comes and we have the accounts of his life, which is just fascinating to me. It is absolutely fascinating that we have his words written down, and we have in our own language, we can read what Jesus did, what God himself did on earth. I mean, when you really think about what the Bible is, it's absolutely amazing, and what people went through to make sure that it was translated so that everyone could read it, and not just scholars and people who deserved it, but everyone. I mean, I, a rather uneducated young woman, have full access to as many Bibles as I could possibly want. It's amazing. And thanks to all of that effort that went into it so that we can have this book, we have glimpses and full views of Jesus, of God, of the plan of salvation, of the history, of where it all began, how it will all end. It's life itself wrapped up in a single book, and it's incredible, and it's not about you. So when the Jews were sitting in their synagogues on Saturdays listening to the Old Testament being read, do you think that they were thinking about how a verse related to them, or if a particular line made them feel good, or if they wanted to, jot that one down and put it up in their house somewhere to remind them of God's comfort? I don't think so. I think when the Jews listened to these words, they were thinking about the Messiah that was coming, that was promised. They didn't know that, he was there or he was coming at that point. They didn't know his coming was imminent. They were looking forward to something that God had promised, or they were thinking about God himself, his goodness, his kindness, his faithfulness, the confidence that they had in him. I mean, they were living in a time when they were being ruled by the Romans, and they had very few good things left in their life. They were miserable, and they wanted God's, his promised one to come and release them. They weren't thinking about themselves. They weren't thinking about a life verse or whatever. They were thinking about God. And how often when we read the Bible do we focus on ourselves instead? When we read it, we think about, what speaks to us, what will be something that we can, grab onto in a hard time. We have so many things that we say about these verses. And if the people who translated the Bible and put it into the Bible format, if they hadn't done it where they, made verses so that it became easy to separate things in chapters and blah, 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 because they weren't written originally with verses and chapters. These were, like I said, letters, genealogies, songs. They weren't written to be read and picked apart. They were written to be read as a whole. They were a story. They were a history, and they were not meant to be, like I said, picked apart and applied to our lives. They were telling a story, and it was about God. It was not about us. We have scoured the Bible in search of words that give us comfort and confidence and that make us happy. But the fact is, that's not why the Bible was written. Again, it wasn't written by one author who was trying to make a self-help book. It was written by dozens of people over a period of thousands of years, and all of it worked together perfectly to describe Jesus. Think about that for a second. Over the course of thousands of years, these guys who had never met, who didn't necessarily know each other or know of each other maybe even, they wrote what happened, and they wrote their inspirations from God, and they wrote things down, and all of them, every piece, fit together perfectly, leading the way to Jesus. Is that not amazing? I mean, does that not kind of blow your mind that over the course of however many thousands of years, not one detail was wrong? And I mean, it was translated from Hebrew to Greek to English, and nothing was a mistake. Everything that we have about Jesus, every detail, is backed up by the Old Testament. That's incredible to me. Here's what I wrote down in my notebook. The Bible isn't a self-help book or something to read when you need a reminder of God's faithfulness. It is an epic history of a promised king, his eventual arrival, and the ripple effect that it's caused ever since. When was the last time you read the Bible thinking about that? When was the last time you read the Bible not because you thought, I have to read today, or I need something that will make me feel better, or something to take notes on because this particular verse stood out to me and I really like that one? There's nothing wrong with any of those things, but that's not what the Bible is. It's not why it was written. Like I said, it's not a self-help book. It's not something to make you feel good. It's something to point to God. And this is something that our culture has completely destroyed the idea of. We don't even have this concept anymore. It's you believe in yourself. You look inward. You will find yourself and you will find joy and peace and blah, blah, blah. That's utter crap. It's complete crap. You will not find peace by looking in yourself. I mean, I cannot fathom that Christians and churches teach this, that they actually encourage this mentality of you are special, you are amazing, you just need to believe in yourself. What kind of a message is that when we're supposed to be saying you pretty much are nothing? Like, your good deeds mean nothing to God apart from Christ. You need to look at Him, and only then will you mean something. That's not a message you hear, but that's the message you should hear. That's what the Bible preaches, but we like to pick those verses and just ignore those kind of things. We don't like to hear that, our best deeds for God apart from Christ are like dirty laundry, basically, is what it says. I mean, you mean nothing to God apart from Christ. You are loved, but your actions and who you are is not something to be like, to present to God like, I'm here. No, I mean, we approach humbly, right? Like, we understand that we are the sinners here. We are the ones who don't deserve anything, and He's extended this incredible hand of love and compassion, and He's created this entire plan to bring us back to Him. He did everything. We did nothing. So why in the heck would we believe in ourselves? Why? The only time that I have found value in myself is not looking at myself, because there's nothing in me apart from God. I mean, if I have talents that make me feel good, they came from God. If I do anything great, it's because of God. And only when I look at Him do I actually feel some value, because only in Him do I have any value. I wrote a lot of little tidbits that I can't help but read, because if I just try to remember them, I won't say them right properly. So I'm going to read them. Okay, ready? If you want confidence in God, and I don't mean by trying to find a verse that makes you feel good. If you want confidence in God, true confidence, remember that this book was written by over 40 authors, contains 66 accounts, letters, and songs that are perfectly aligned. What was said about God and His promised king was completely true, from the oldest promise to the ones Gabriel told Mary. There is not one anomaly. God doesn't make mistakes. So instead of going into the Bible, trying to find something that will make you feel good, that when you're going through a tough time, you grab onto one verse that will make you feel good. I honestly don't think that's going to help much unless you look at the whole picture and you see how incredibly in control God is of every detail. Okay, I have been scouring the Bible, looking for not just things to talk about for this, but just trying to get a grip on Jesus the King, which is going to be one of my future videos, and looking back at the first kings of Israel and their story, and back to Judah, who was promised the scepter, and all of these little details and tidbits. And I was going through, just looking for the name Judah through Bible Gateway. They have this search feature. You can just type in a word and it'll show you every time it's mentioned. And it was just fascinating to go over the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of every time this tribe is mentioned, and every time this person is mentioned, and every time this line is just going through history, and nothing had changed. Like, God's promise was the exact same at the beginning, when it was said that Judah's line would be the scepter, meaning his line would contain the kings. Goes through, we have the kings, and it comes to Jesus, the final king. Like, there are so many things that could have and should have gone wrong if one person was in control or trying to say this is going to happen, but has absolutely no power to actually make anything happen. He wouldn't be right. There would be absolutely no possible way that he could guess all of these things that would come together. There's no way. The only way that all of this could have worked together was if one was in control, and that one was incredibly powerful above everything else. I mean, how many armies went up against Israel? One of those could have wiped them out that would have been the end of the kings. There would have been no Jesus after that, because the line of David would have stopped. That would have been it. But no, God stopped every army from attacking Israel or from destroying them completely. Yes, they got taken away and blah, blah, blah. But the history continued, and it just kept going until Jesus came. There's so much that we look over in the Bible because we're trying to see something that makes us feel something. That is the exact opposite of how we should be reading the Bible. We should be reading the Bible in hopes of seeing God, in hopes of seeing Jesus, in hopes of seeing his power and his control in this incredible story that shouldn't have happened. There's a verse, I think it's in Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you. That one's a very popular, encouraging verse. People will throw that on Facebook when they're going through a tough time. It's on pillows, it's on notebooks, whatever. We forget that there's actually context to these things, that, in that time, what God was saying, he was telling his people when they were going into, I think it was Babylon at that time. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I did not research this. I've been researching a lot of things and not this. But what I'm saying is God was making this promise to a people in a certain situation, and we like to just pluck that one out and apply it to our lives. God knows the plans he has for me. Well, of course he does. But I'm saying not every verse in the Bible relates to you. In fact, you want to hear something? Not one relates to you. Not a single author of one of these accounts or songs is sitting there going, somebody's going to be struggling with pornography, which, by the way, I don't even know what that is 2,000 years ago, and they're going to need some encouragement. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, that will help them so much. I am done. No. People who were writing the Bible were writing entire things, not verses or chapters. They were writing an entire book. Letter. It was not a book. I'm saying we can't get away from this idea of it being a book, a chapter, and a verse. It's a letter. And if you read something in its context and knowing what was actually happening at that time with the person writing it, and you read it all, you get such a different picture than when you just pluck a verse out. Because I honestly don't think that that's what God wants us to do with his book. I would not like it if I wrote a book, which I am, and someone just took one line out that they liked and ignored the rest. Be like, well, I'm glad you liked that line, but what did you think of the other 8,000? Don't do that. Don't take apart God's book because you want to feel better. Look at the whole thing. It's amazing. The authors, specifically of the letters in the New Testament, were writing to a specific audience for a specific purpose. And when you read it, you can actually see that, and it's amazing. It's incredible to see the personality of these people. Like the same thing of what I said with Avicii. When you read the lyrics, you can see the person behind it. It's the same of every person who wrote in the Bible. You can see David's heart in the Psalms. You can see Paul's heart when he's writing letters. And you can absolutely see Jesus' heart, even though he wasn't the one penning these things. You can still see him in what was penned. Okay, here it is. My last note to end this video finally. Rest in the whole Bible and take your eyes off of yourself while reading it. You are not the reason it was written. God is. It's so simple, but boy is that ever not a message that we hear in church. Am I wrong? When was the last time you heard, don't read the Bible for yourself, read it for God. Read it for how it was intended to be read. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope I haven't offended too many people. But I do hope that I've helped you to see the Bible as you actually should see it, because I'm finally seeing it that way, and it's amazing. Just that's my final word. The Bible is amazing. And that whole thing with, what was it, GQ that said, the Bible's irrelevant, you shouldn't read it. Don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. They really don't. But obviously I do. So go read your Bible. Not necessarily from start to finish, because I'm not saying you have to read it all in one sitting, but I am saying read a chapter, not a verse. Read a book, not a verse. Read it as it was meant to be read. And if you don't know what that means, try to figure it out. I'll see you next week. What was said about God and his promised king was completely true, from the oldest promise to the ones... Whoa! Let's try this again. How do I end this? Do I tell you how sweaty I am? I'm so sweaty and I can't have a fan on because that would ruin my sound. Okay, I'm gonna go, spray water on myself. Okay.